Hello. Thanks for visiting. Files, Fear, and Federal Fists. FDR and the FBI, Part 2. Legal Warfare on the Working Class. One of the central challenges for the FBI during this period was jurisdiction. Labor disputes often fell under state and local authority, yet the FBI, eager to stamp out union influence, would routinely search for any slender pretext to federalize cases. When jurisdiction couldn't be stretched, the FBI readily lent its manpower, intelligence, and institutional weight to local police departments and reactionary courts. The FBI's zeal wasn't confined to skullduggery. Legal harassment became one of the most effective means of bludgeoning organized labor into submission. When surveillance and provocation were insufficient, the Roosevelt administration and the FBI proved adept at manipulating the legal system. When they couldn't find a federal hook to hang their hat on, they got creative. Perhaps most exquisite irony was twisting the Sherman Antitrust Act of 1890, a law originally intended to curtail corporate monopolies, against trade unions. Under Roosevelt's Department of Justice and with FBI assistance, a law enacted to dismantle and rein in robber barons was perverted into a weapon to thwart the working class. A cudgel to prosecute labor. It's like filling a fire extinguisher with gasoline to start fires, perverse, but undeniably creative. This legal strategy provided a powerful tool for finding grounds, on whatever slender pretext, for federal jurisdiction in labor cases. This grotesque inversion of justice demonstrated just how deeply the federal government had aligned itself with the industrial and financial elite. Unions organizing boycotts or strikes could be, and often were, charged with disrupting commerce. The gall of it, a government preaching fairness while wielding a legal blackjack against the very workers it claimed to uplift. Civil damages were pursued against unions at every opportunity. When a federal statute could not be directly applied, the FBI's policy was to give its full aid to local police and courts. The Bureau would share intelligence files, provide investigative support, and coordinate with local law enforcement to ensure that union leaders were arrested and prosecuted under state or municipal laws. This federal-local partnership created a unified front of state power against organized labor. Even when charges didn't hold, the cumulative cost of legal defense, lost work hours, and public mistrust eroded union strength and morale. Bail bonds for arrested workers were set at astronomical sums, designed not just to punish, but to bleed unions dry, often financially crippling a union's treasury. Worse still, the FBI often interfered with union efforts to secure bail, pressuring courts and bail agents. Bail bonds for arrested workers were set at uniformly high amounts, prohibitively high, not merely to punish but to ensure continued detention, often financially crippling a union's treasury. Not satisfied with this, the FBI frequently interfered with the efforts of unions and defense committees to secure bond, pressuring and leaning on bail bondsmen not to deal with radicals. When unions managed to scrape together bail money, the FBI would pressure bondsmen not to accept it, or challenge the sources of bail funds in court, further ensuring labor leaders languished in cells. It's rather like offering someone a lifeline while simultaneously cutting the rope. And then there were the raids. The criminalization didn't stop at individuals. Trade unions were targeted through asset seizures, damage suits, and raids on their offices. Raids on union halls became commonplace. Union halls were stormed, records, books, membership lists, and financial records confiscated and turned into fishing nets for evidence in politically motivated prosecutions. These seizures served to disrupt union operations while providing prosecutors with material for any irregularity that could be used to frame charges. Complementing criminal prosecutions, damage suits were also instituted against trade unions at every opportunity by employers, often with the tacit encouragement and informal assistance of law enforcement, further draining union resources and morale. The G-Man mystique. Propaganda as mind control. The FBI's campaign wasn't just fought in courtrooms or picket lines, it was a battle for the American psyche. The mind is a pliable thing, easily swayed by a well-spun tale. At that period, a feeling of awe towards all federal authority was drilled into the minds of the population, including future workers during their school days, and then carefully nurtured by clever propaganda throughout their adult life. There was a careful special build-up to augment the standing of the FBI in the eyes of both the workers and the general public. The Bureau, with Roosevelt's approval, built a mythos around the G-Man, glorified in newsreels, radio serials, and Hollywood flicks. The highly dramatized campaign against popularized outlaws like Dillinger, Pretty Boy Floyd, and Machine Gun Kelly wasn't just law enforcement. It was a publicity stunt to cloak the FBI in an aura of invincibility. A series of movie plays glorifying the G-Men has reinforced the drive. Newsreels of the G-Men in training, accompanied by the inevitable sadist speech by J. Edgar Hoover, was a powerful supplement. The radio contributed its share through the Gangbusters serial and numerous other devices. Workers, raised on this total mind control propaganda, were conditioned to see the Bureau as a righteous force, not the union-busting arm of the state. This was the primary advantage of the FBI as an instrument for its campaign against unions. Every raid, every arrest was staged for maximum drama, reinforcing the narrative that labor was a nest of miscreants. These factors were a big help to Roosevelt in his anti-union drive. The methods used by the FBI were carefully measured to reinforce the narrative of union workers' inherent criminality. Their tactics surrounding arrest and trial were deliberately calculated to create in the public eye the impression that the accused workers were deranged, dangerous, and degenerate characters. Arrests were made in dramatic, public ways. Mass arrests, often conducted with stagey displays of force, were timed to generate maximum media coverage. The FBI understood that perception is reality, and they choreographed arrests with the theatrical flair of a Broadway producer. The most popular hour for the arrest of trade unionists was between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. For maximum spectacle, the daily press was often tipped off in advance, ensuring plenty of photographs. They snapped and obtained pictures of the G-Men dragging the workers in their pajamas and herding them off to jail, handcuffed and fastened by chain like sideshow freaks for the morning edition. The visual message was unmistakable. These weren't legitimate labor organizers. They were criminals, enemies of the state, threats to the American way of life. It was theater, pure and simple, meant to brand every unionist a thug, a troublemaker, or a traitor. Hapless workers were portrayed in newspapers and press releases as bomb throwers, radicals, and fifth columnists.